This problem has resisted us for 5,000 years. We dedicated entire institutes to it.
Yeah, I see why. You're solving it from the inside. You need to
Just continuous research facility in the known sectors and had been accepting applications from the galaxy's finest scientific minds for 800 years. Jace had arrived on Coalition Youth Exchange program, which was a completely different category. He was 17. He had been accepted because his secondary school physics teacher had submitted his name without telling him. After grading a problem set in which Jace had solved 6 questions correctly through methods the answer key didn't account for, in one question incorrectly through a method that the teacher had spent 3 days trying to disprove before concluding it was actually a better approach than the standard one. The Institute's intake coordinator had reviewed the submission and flagged it with a notation that translated approximately as unusual problem solving methodology recommend observation period, which was how Jace ended up on Orbital Platform 7 in a worn gray hoodie surrounded by 800 years of accumulated scientific achievement assigned to the Xenotech Engineering Division under the supervision of Dr. Vel'hari, senior researcher, 43 years of service, the foremost living expert on Vel'hari propulsion theory. She had looked at him during the intake assessment with those pale blue-gray eyes and said, "Your academic record is incomplete." "I'm 17, he said. "Your methodology notes are inconsistent with standard frameworks." "I know," he said. "I don't really use standard frameworks." She had made a note and assigned him a workspace. For the first week and a half he did the work he was assigned and did it correctly and mostly on time, and Dr. Vel watched him with the measuring attention of someone who had formed a hypothesis and was waiting for the data to support or contradict it. On the 11th day, she made a decision. She pulled up the Kethara Convergence Problem on the lab's primary holographic display, not the workspace display, the primary one, the large one that the whole division could see, and said, "This is the oldest unsolved problem in Vel'hari theoretical physics, 5,000 years, 12 dedicated research institutes, 40,000 published papers." Looked at Jace. "I want to see how you approach it." The room was quiet. Jace got up from his desk, still in the gray hoodie, still holding his medal, and walked to the display and looked at it. The Kethara Convergence Problem was a mathematical framework describing the behavior of matter at the convergence point of 3 simultaneous spatial fold events, the theoretical basis for any propulsion system capable of true instantaneous transit. The Vel'hari had been circling it for 5,000 years because every time they approached the convergence mathematics from within the standard spatial reference frame, the equations collapsed into an unsolvable recursive loop that consumed its own solution. Jace looked at it for about 90 seconds. Then he put down his mug, reached up with both hands, and started rearranging the display. Not solving it. Rearranging, pulling elements apart, rotating the diagram's central reference framework, essentially turning the entire mathematical structure on its axis and looking at from the outside. The convergence point, he said not to anyone in particular, is defined as the intersection of threefold events. In the standard framework, the observer is inside the convergence, which means you're always trying to describe the behavior of the intersection from a position that is itself being intersected. He moved another element. You need an external reference frame, something outside all three fold events simultaneously. There is no external reference frame for three simultaneous spatial folds, said one of the senior researchers from the. It wasn't hostile. It was the statement of someone citing 5,000 years of established consensus. Not in three-dimensional space, Jace said. But you can construct one mathematically in the temporal dimension if you treat the convergence event as a single moment, rather than three overlapping processes. He paused and drew something in the gesture of someone used to working with physical models when their brain needed the extra dimension. Think of it like you can't describe the center of a whirlpool from inside the whirlpool, but if you take a photograph from above, the mathematics of the center become visible. The room had gone very quiet. Dr. Vel had not moved from the position she had been in since he started working. Her pale blue-gray eyes tracked every adjustment he made to the display with the attention of someone watching something they had been waiting for without knowing what they were waiting for. The temporal external frame, she said carefully, if you construct it from the convergence event's own signature rather than from a static external point, it becomes self-referencing rather than self-consuming, Jace said. The recursion becomes a feature rather than a failure. The display which Jace had rearranged into something that looked nothing like the standard representation of the Kethara Convergence Problem, and everything like solution held no collapse, no recursion loop. The mathematics completed. There was no sound from the division for approximately 11 seconds. Then Dr. Vel walked to the display and began working beside him, not checking his work, extending it, building from the new framework with the specific precision of someone who had spent 43 years standing at the edge of something. She could almost see the rest of the division joined in stages. First one senior researcher, then two more, then the full room, all pulling at the threads of the new framework, expanding it, testing it, finding that it held. In every direction they pushed, held for 14 hours. At the end of the 14 hours, Dr. Vel looked at the completed framework now, spanning 3 connected display panels and covering more theoretical ground than 40,000 papers combined had managed, and looked. Jace. He was back at his desk with a fresh mug, working on his assigned maintenance schematic, which he had apparently been doing in parallel during the 14 hours. Jace, she said. Yes. You solved the Kethara Convergence Problem. We solved it, he. I changed where you were standing. Did the actual solving. She looked at him for a long moment,